What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a slightly different video, deviating away from the battle content. Today we are going for something slightly more educational, I guess. So, Crown Tundra is here. And with it comes a lot of kind of old Pokemon, old VGC staples, as well as a couple of new Pokemon. And in this video, I'm going to be exploring some of those Pokemon, how I think they're going to play, what they can do, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how viable I think they'll be in the new VGC format. So there's a lot of new information to take in with the Crown Tundra, with the return of like Landorus Ultra Beasts. You've got the Genies to deal with, the old Kantonian Birds. There's a lot of Pokemon coming back that were very strong in VGC that you need to learn about, I think, if you want to be good. And so I think particularly for newer players, hopefully this video should be helpful as just a rundown of what everything does. But it should also be useful for kind of more experienced players who just want a bit of a recap if they haven't played with these mons in a while. So as I said, I'm going to be going over the returning Pokemon that I think are relevant, as well as the new Pokemon that I think are going to be good. I'll also have a look at some of the existing Pokemon in the format that I think will be affected by the Crown Tundra kind of significantly, whether that be through the introduction of like direct competition or by the introduction of new checks or counters or anything like that. I will also preface this by saying that this is all just opinion. None of this is factual by any means. I could end up being wrong. I've been wrong before. So just bear that in mind as we go forward. So the first we're going to look at is the returning Pokemon. And I'm only going to look at the ones that I think are going to be most relevant to the metagame. Obviously, I'm not going to go over every single Pokemon that's back, because that would take ages. As well as discussing some that I think were hyped up, that I think maybe won't live up to the expectations. So we're going to start off with the obvious one, Landorus. Right, this thing has been a menace in VGC for a long time. Anyone who hasn't played against this thing before should count themselves lucky. So, like, it's got amazing stats. It's got, I think, base 142 attack, base 91 speed. It's got solid bulk. Which is complemented then by Intimidate. And I think the big thing for Landorus this gen is the fact that I think it's going to be a terrifying Dynamax Pokemon. One of the things it's always struggled with in the past is a lack of good stab moves. Because it had to rely on Earthquake and Fly, and still does, in fact, in this generation, because it didn't get high horsepower or anything like that. And Earthquake's a fine move. You don't really want to hit your partner if you can get around it. Fly, though, is terrible. But with Dynamax, it now has access to 3 turns every game. For 3 turns every game, it has access to a very powerful Flying Stab, which it didn't really have before. And on top of that, like, just the max moves it gets are very, very good for what Landorus wants to do. So, with base 91 speed, it's not that fast, but with a speed boost, which it can give itself with max airstream now, it's outspeeding pretty much everything, apart from maybe like a Regieleki that's spec'd to outspeed +1 Lando or whatever. So the airstream boost is really helpful. It has Intimidate to patch its physical defense, and now it has access to Max Quake to patch its special defense. And it has access to Max Knuckle if it wants to use that to boost its attack. So with Dynamax, it has the ability to boost every single one of its stats, which is kind of scary. Even outside of that, like, it's got a fantastic move pool with, like I said, it's got Superpower for fighting coverage. It's got good stabs, or at least good stab types for Dynamax. Gets Rock Slide, which is the best move in the game. Well, actually it may not be anymore. It may have been dethroned, but we'll get to that later. Rock Slide, coming off a fast Pokemon like Landorus with a Choice Scarf, is going to be getting a lot of flinches, which can win games. It's got U-Turn, which is really good for bouncing Intimidates in and out. And I think it can run a whole lot of sets as well. It's very difficult to predict what Landorus is going to be doing on opponent's team. You can see Assault Vest, like Choice Scarf, Choice Band, Life Orb. You see Yachi Berry. I've seen Focus Sash before. There's a lot of choices. So you've got to be very careful with how you play around it. Another big thing to note with Landorus is the fact that Hidden Power Ice has been removed from the game. Well, I mean Hidden Power in general, obviously, but specifically for Landorus, Hidden Power Ice, which removes a lot of Pokemon's best answers against it. If you look at like Tapu Koko, Zapdos, Thundurus, that kind of stuff in previous generations, loved having Hidden Power Ice deal with Landorus. And people ran like mixed or special Landorus Therian sets just to get Hidden Power Ice coverage against opposing Landorus, is how good Hidden Power Ice was. So without that, that's kind of a passive buff for Landorus. I think it's still not like a perfect Pokemon, it's very strong, but like outside of Dynamax, like I said before, its stabs aren't very strong, and also Intimidate is not as strong as it has previously been. Abilities like Scrappy, Inner Focus, Own Tempo, that kind of thing, have been buffed so that Intimidate no longer drops their stats. And on top of that, there are more defiant and competitive Pokemon that have been introduced with the Crown Tundra, as well as a couple that have been relatively prominent in the last couple of formats. So we'll get onto those a little bit later, but I think there is more of a kind of a more counterplay to Intimidate now than there previously has been. Landorus Incarnate is more of a footnote really than anything else, but I think I figured I might as well mention it because it could be relevant. It's got Sheer Force, which is a good ability. With Life Orb, you can boost your attacks. I can't remember what the multiplier is. I think it's 1.3 multiplier for both of them. And it has access to Sheer Force now because of the ability patch. I don't think it's been legal with Sheer Force in VGC before now. I could be wrong. But it's got a good special move pool and a decent special attack stat to have used that. It's got like Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, Psychic. It does lack a special Flying Stab though, which hurts that set a lot. And also Sheer Force doesn't work with Dynamax. So the increase in power you get from Dynamaxing is pretty small. So I don't think Landorus Incarnate can be that relevant. But it's good to be prepared for, I guess. So now we'll move on to the other two genies. We've got Tornadus and Thundurus. Tornadus, I think, is going to be the stronger of the two of these, significantly, in this gen, and that's because it gets Prankster Tailwind. Which, like, as obviously we've seen a lot of Whimsicott recently, I think Tornadus is basically kind of a similar but slightly better version of Whimsicott, in my opinion. So it gets Prankster Tailwind. Got a great support move pool with like Taunt, Tailwind, Icy Wind, that kind of stuff. Having Tailwind and Icy Wind is really useful because a lot of the time, one thing that Whimsicott would do is it set up Tailwind, but then an opponent would match the Tailwind, and now suddenly your speed you lose speed control again. Like especially if they have a max Airstream user or something next to their Tailwind setter. Whereas with Tailwind and Icy Wind, you can get Tailwind up and then maintain speed control, which is super useful. It's got a good offensive move pool as well. You could run it offensively, I don't think that's the best way to use it, but it's got like Heat Wave, Sludge Bomb, Psychic, it's got good flying stabs, it's got Air Slash and Hurricane, so you could run an offensive set. I think you're still always going to want Tailwind on it. But also, like, for a support Pokemon, it's not got phenomenal bulk. Like, it can live most hits. Like, you can invest bulk into it so that it'll go down to 2 hits, which means you don't necessarily need a Focus Sash, which is useful. And I think that's particularly relevant because it's slower than Whimsicott. And so, because Whimsicott also has Prankster, Whimsicott can taunt Tornadus before it can do anything. So I think not having to run Sash and being able to spec into bulk means that it can run a Mental Herb and stop itself getting taunted. Or alternatively, it can go for like a Healing Berry or something. So it has better options for items there. Thundurus, I think if you're wanting to use it as like a Prankster Pokemon, I think it's just kind of worse than Tornadus. Like, it does the same thing except it doesn't get Tailwind. Like, it has to use Thunder Wave instead, which has been nerfed since Thundurus was the best Pokemon in the format a number of years ago. However, what I could see it kind of having a bit of a niche as is a physical Pokemon with Defiant. Because it's got a half-decent physical move pool. It's got like Fly, it's got Wild Charge for stabs, we've got Superpower, Lash Out, Iron Tail, among a couple other moves. So I think it's base 115 attack and base 111 speed. That's a pretty solid Defiant user if you want to use it for that. Although that said, it still doesn't match up that well against Landorus, even with a Defiant boost. So, I don't know. I think if you're going to see Thundurus used, it's going to be mostly for that, because I think Tornadus just outclasses it as a support Pokemon. So next up we'll have a look at the Tapus. Now, Game Freak are merciful overlords, and they decided that they aren't going to give the Tapus the Ilo Armor tutor moves, so that means Lele doesn't get Expanding Force, Bulu doesn't get Grassy Glide, Tapu Koko doesn't get Rising Voltage, and of course, most importantly, Tapu Fini doesn't get Misty Explosion. However, Game Freak have also decided that it would be funny to give Play Rough to Tapu Lele and Tapu Fini, who don't want to use it, nor do they need it, because they both have Moonblast. But they have not given it to either Tapu Koko or Tapu Bulu, the two who have high physical attack stats. Which is a bit of a kick in the teeth, really. Tapu Bulu could have had a niche if it had Play Rough, but it doesn't, which makes it significantly worse, I think. Obviously, the plus side of the Tapus is they're all good terrain setters. And obviously they're going to be a big part of the metagame. So first up we have Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele generally is used as a very offensive Pokemon. Like, this thing hits incredibly hard in Psychic terrain. You'll often see like fast Choice Scarf set. I've seen like bulky Specs, Life Orb. But you'll normally see an offensive item on it. I could maybe see like a Focus Sash set popping up, particularly with Dynamax around. There's a lot of things that could one-shot it. But I think, yeah, generally it's going to be leaning towards offensive items. With 95 speed as well, it can go pretty quick, or it can run a slightly more bulky set. I think one of the issues though is it can't really do both, just because its physical defense is so bad that if you're going to invest in it, you need to really commit to investing in defenses to make it worthwhile. But it's still got a relatively good mix of sets that it can run. Tapu Bulu hits very hard. Like, grassy terrain boosted Wood Hammer is a very powerful attack. However, that probably sounds familiar to a lot of people who've been playing this format, because Rillaboom also does that. And I think without Fairy Stab, Tapu Bulu really struggles to find a niche over Rillaboom. Because it's got 5 more base attack, but that's rarely going to be relevant. It's slower, its move pool is more narrow. Honestly, I just don't see Tapu Bulu being a big part of the metagame that has Rillaboom in it, which is unfortunate. Right, so the next couple of Tapus, we have Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko is very fast, it's base 130 speed. Dynamax gives it access to a very powerful Fairy-type stab move, which it didn't really previously have. Like, in previous generations, you saw Tapu Koko run Fairy MZ a lot of the time, just to give it access to a one-off Fairy attack. Whereas now Dynamax gives it access to Max Starfall, so it can consistently go for those Fairy attacks. And like, Max Starfall does over double the damage of a Spread Dazzling Gleam. So that's a big change for Tapu Koko, I think. This thing's going to be a powerful Dynamax Pokemon. It's also a fantastic pivot with Volt Switch, particularly in a meta that I think is going to have Terrain Wars as a big factor. Being able to Volt Switch out to switch in and set your terrain again, and then Volt Switch out, set your terrain again, that kind of thing, is going to be really useful. Especially on a Pokemon that fast, it makes it very hard to pin down and hit. It's just like a constant offensive threat. It also has a decent variety of sets. I think the most common ones are going to be like Specs, Life Orb, Focus Sash, kind of offensive items, but you can run a bulky support set. Assault Vest sets saw a fair bit of play in past generations. It's used Sugar Berry before. So you can run like a support set. It's got moves like Electro Ed, Nature's Madness, that kind of stuff. So I could see like an Assault Vest set with those two, Volt Switch and Dazzling Gleam, being popular, very similar to something I used back in 2017, I think. I really enjoyed using it for Assault Vest Tapu Koko, so I'm sure I'll probably try that at some point. Unfortunately, it has 115 base physical attack, but it doesn't get Play Rough. It's got a good physical move pool, so like I could see physical sets popping up here and there. Like it can use Close Combat, it's got Brave Bird. But physical sets I think are just far too weak to Landorus, and the special sets are going to be a lot more consistent. The other thing is it doesn't hit that hard outside of electric terrain, because it's only got base 90 special attack, and it's going to be running a special set most of the time. But like I said, it can Volt Switch out and reset its terrain quite easily, so I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. Lastly, with Tapus, we have Tapu Fini. Now, Tapu Fini is incredibly bulky. This thing is so hard to get rid of. The most common set we're going to see, I think, is probably going to be the Calm Mind set. That's what was most common last time Tapu Fini was legal, I believe. And that set's very powerful, because Tapu Fini does not have a lot of immediate power, but you can't leave it alone, because if it gets a couple of Calm Minds off, this thing becomes basically unkillable. Things that you can also see offensive sets. Specs was quite popular in previous generations, or previous formats. I imagine it'd probably be similar. This time around you may see some spec set. Or you could see dedicated support with moves like it's got Haze, Heal Pulse, Icy Wind, Taunt, Nature's Madness, that kind of stuff. So it's got, again, same as Tapu Koko, it's got good variety, I think, which means it's not easy to figure out what it wants to do right off the bat. Like against the Calm Mind set, you might want to taunt it straight away, but if your opponent's running a spec set and you taunt it, you've wasted a turn. So it's a tough one to read. The thing is, I think one of the issues is, though, that it needs to be set up or have like a choice specs or life orb or something to be an offensive threat. So if you're not running the support set, you either need to be running an offensive item or you need a turn to set up. Otherwise, it's not that threatening. And also, it's the only Tapu that doesn't get a power boost from the terrain it sets, which I think hurts it a little bit. But it's not too bad, because like I said, it can use Calm Mind to boost itself. So next up, we're going to have a look at the Kantonian Birds. Moltres and Articuno, don't use them. 4 times weak to rock, pretty slow, not very bulky, poor move pools, bad Pokemon, don't use these Pokemon. Zapdos, on the other hand, is very usable, I think. It's got good stats with base 100 speed, base 125 special attack, pretty solid bulk, and its typing's very good. Electric Flying is a really nice typing, because Electric's only weakness is ground. And obviously on a flying type, ground doesn't affect it, and so adding electric to a flying type doesn't give it any more weaknesses, it just takes away its electric weakness, which is pretty handy. It now has good flying stab, which it didn't have in previous generations, in Hurricane and Air Slash, whereas previously its best flying stab was Air Cutter, which is not a good move. Gets recovery in the form of Roost, which is nice if you want to run like a bulkier set. Static as well is a good ability. It's not like game breaking, but it's better than Pressure, certainly. And like games can be won on loss of paralysis, so having a 30% chance to paralyze anything that touches you can be a big factor, certainly. Like I said, it's not the most overpowering ability in the world, but it's nice to have. It's better than Pressure. I think if you're running Zapdos, you're generally going to run it with Static. It's also got a decent variety of sets. However, I think its more supportive roles are made worse by the fact that it doesn't get Tailwind in this generation. So your best option for that is maybe something like a Thunder Wave or something like that, or you can maybe change it up and run Eerie Impulse, I think it gets, for a bulkier set, along with like maybe Dual Stabs and Roost or something. But I think more likely we're going to see more offensive sets developing with Zapdos. Especially now that it gets good flying stab, so you could see like Thunderbolt, Hurricane or Air Slash, Heat Wave, and Roost or Detect. I think one thing that harms the offensive set is the fact that it's lost access to Hidden Power, which gives it less of a way of getting around Landorus, but the addition of Flying Stab, I think, offsets that somewhat. So Zapdos, I think, offensively is still going to be quite a threat. I think its bulky set is not going to be as common as it used to be, though. So next up we have the Ultra Beasts, and there are thousands of these. We'll start with some of the less good ones. Guzzlord, awful stats. It's got it's got great HP, but it's got like poor offenses, bad bulk, bad speed. Its typing sucks. It's 4 times weak to Fairy in a metagame with Tapus in it. Don't use Guzzlord. Guzzlord's terrible. Blacephalon, I don't think is going to be that good this meta. I think kind of glass cannons this extreme have been relatively bad so far in like a Dynamax metagame, just because when something Dynamaxes, like even something as powerful as Blacephalon is likely not going to be able to OHKO a lot of Dynamax Pokemon, and then it just gets blown up by an opposing Pokemon, so it's an unfavourable trade. So I think glass cannons are generally worse at the moment than they have been in previous generations, thanks to Dynamax. So I don't see Blacephalon being that good, honestly. It's very frail, and I just don't think it hits quite hard enough to warrant using in a metagame where Dynamax Pokemon exist. Buzzwole's interesting, because it's got good offensive options, with its dual stabs, bug and fighting. It's got dual wing beat this gen, which is pretty significant because it means it has access to max airstream. It's good coverage in like Ice Punch, Rock Slide, Iron Head. It's like Poison Jab. It's got a bunch of good coverage moves. The problem is its special defense is really not very good, and its speed is very like middling. I think it's like in the 70s somewhere, which is not great. So even at +1, it's not going to outspeed a lot of the kind of biggest threats in the format. Like I don't think it outspeeds Dragapult at +1, won't outspeed Pheromosa at +1. Obviously, won't be anywhere near Regieleki, but like who is? The other thing is like its defensive typing is kind of bad, which means that really kind of compounds its relatively poor special bulk, because there are so many max airstream users in the format at the moment, because max airstream is, I think in a lot of people's opinion, the best max move in the game. And so a lot of Pokemon will be running max airstream, which Buzzwole does not appreciate. So I don't think Buzzwole's going to be particularly common. Next set of Ultra Beasts we'll look at, we have Naganadel. Naganadel's got great speed, base 121. Got good special attack, good stabs for Dynamax, Dragon, and Poison on a special attacker, both good max moves. It's got good coverage, gets Flamethrower, I think is going to be the most common one to get through Steel types, as well as T-Bolt. It's got Air Slash, so it's got a few options for that. The downsides are it's very frail, and I guess similar issue to Blacephalon, where I think in a metagame dominated by Dynamax, kind of glass cannons aren't as good. And the other thing is, in the last gen, it had access to Tailwind, which gave it a good niche, but in this gen, it doesn't have Tailwind, which kind of turns into a bit of a like generic special attacker. Like it kind of feels similar to me to Pokemon like Inteleon, who's never been that popular. Just there's nothing particularly extraordinary about it, so I don't think it's going to be a particularly big player this gen. Xurkitree is an interesting one, because Xurkitree has staggeringly high special attack, and access to Tail Glow, which boosts your special attack by 3 stages. And at +3, it's KOing like everything. The issue is, it's very frail, and it's not that fast. And so if you want to run a Tail Glow set in particular effectively, you're gonna need support of some kind, whether it's redirection, speed control. You need something to help it set up, basically. On top of that, its coverage is not fantastic. The only coverage it gets is Energy Ball and Dazzling Gleam, and that covers for Ground and Dragon types who resist Electric, so it's not the worst. But at the same time, if you want to be running a Tail Glow set, you probably want like Protect, Tail Glow, Electric Move, and then you can only run one of those 2 attacks. It's also got a lot of competition from electric types this gen. Like, so many good electric types have been introduced, between like Tapu Koko, Regieleki, Zapdos, Raikou to an extent. I think like Regieleki is faster and has more immediate power. Koko sets terrain and is a better pivot, is much faster. Raikou's faster and has better coverage. Zapdos has access to max airstream. So I just don't know if Xurkitree is going to be able to find itself a niche among all the electric types in this gen. Nihilego, again, I think is one of those Pokemon that like could be good with the right support, but at the moment just feels a bit not fantastic. I think its weaknesses are a bit too prevalent for it to be really that strong. It's got good stabs for Dynamax, similar to Naganadel. Poison Stab on a special attacker is very useful in max moves because you boost your own special attack. Rock's good because setting up Sandstorm boosts its special defense. The problem is it has just nothing to hit Steel types. Like, its coverage is not that great. Nothing to hit Steel types with super effective damage at least. So it gets pretty hard walled by a lot of Pokemon. Like an Assault Vest Metagross is not going to be able to do anything to that. Even Kartana like resists anything it can throw at it. So with an Assault Vest, Nihilego's not getting through that very quickly. It's also got awful physical defense. It's got amazing stats across the board, apart from its physical defense, which is awful. And so like any super effective physical hit is KOing. It's 4 times weak to Earthquake, which is never a good thing in a format with Landorus or a lot of like max Quake users. That's a pretty common tech move at the moment to run ground type moves. So I don't know if Nihilego is going to be that good. I think it could be interesting. Like, it's one of those Pokemon that if it can get going, I reckon it could probably snowball quite quickly in a game. But I just think it's not going to be consistent enough at getting kind of the positioning it needs to be effective. Next set of Ultra Beasts, we have Pheromosa and Kartana. So Pheromosa is ridiculously fast. Second fastest thing in the format now. Second fastest relevant thing in the format. Behind Regieleki. It's got fantastic offenses. It's 137 base in both offensive stats. This thing again feels very like glass cannon-y, but it has a lot more support options than something like Blacephalon, and it has a lot more speed, and so I think it can get away with it slightly better. It gets coaching this generation, so it now has, apart from Riolu, the fastest. It's the fastest coaching user, and like frankly, Riolu's terrible, and is only used for prankster coaching. So having Pheromosa who can actually do other things is nice. Speed swap, obviously with a base 151 speed, it's very useful. You can set up a slower Pokemon, speed swap it, and now suddenly it's a monster threat. Like you've seen speed swap strats with I think Snorlax was a big one, kind of early Gen 8. So we may see something along those lines crop up again. I could see it being used with Glastria, the Ice Horse. Like you can go turn 1 coaching, turn 2 speed swap. Now you have a buffed up base 151 speed Glastria, which is kind of scary. It's got a fantastic offensive move pool. It can run like any combination of like close combat, Bug Buzz, Lunge, Ice Beam, Icy Wind, U-turn, Poison Jab, Drill Run. So between all of those, like it's got decent support options with speed control in Icy Wind. It's got like pretty much all the coverage it could need. Like Ice Beam's a huge bit of coverage in this gen, as is Poison Jab to an extent with all the Tapus running around. The big downside of Pheromosa is that it's made of paper. Like a gentle breeze will snap it in half. I think there are Pokemon that can probably just KO this thing with Gust, so I'm not actually being that hyperbolic when I say a gentle breeze will kill it. Because of that, it kind of has to run Focus Sash, in my opinion. Like I don't think it can really get away with running anything else. And it's a terrible Dynamax option. Because like Dynamax can often help make frailer Pokemon bulky enough to live the 1 or 2 hits it needs to live to be effective, but with Pheromosa, like you're still getting one-shot by so much stuff when you Dynamax. The upside of having such awful defenses is that it makes running mixed sets or mixed attacking sets a lot more viable, because having a nature that lowers one of your defenses is now significantly less relevant because you're dead to everything anyway. Now, Kartana, I think, is going to be the scariest offensive Ultra Beast. It's got good speed, base 109. It's got an insanely high attack stat, to the point where you don't even need to invest in it a lot of the time. And I think this is the Pokemon that I think I'm most scared of abusing Beast Boost and Dynamax with. So, say for example, you Dynamax your Kartana, you KO something with Max Overgrowth on the first turn of Dynamax, and now suddenly you're at +1 attack because of Beast Boost, and you've got Terrain boosting your Max Overgrowth for the next turn. Like, this thing could snowball insanely quickly, I think. The downsides are, like, it can patch the... it's got rubbish special defense, basically. It can patch it somewhat with Assault Vest, and things like, because its attack stat is so high, it actually often doesn't need to invest in attack, which means it can instead invest in its special defense to try and patch that. Also, its HP is really low, which means that even with, like, I think it's 131 physical defense, it still doesn't take physical hits that well. But like I said, you can invest in bulk over attack if you want to. Otherwise, you're going to see this thing with, like, Sash. You could probably see it with, like, Life Orb or something like that. But I think Assault Vest is going to be the most common set, because this, I think, is going to be a Dynamax target a lot of the time. Other downsides, no good Steel Stab. The best Steel stab it has is Smart Strike, which is only base 70, and so it's a base 120 power max move, which is not fantastic. It really struggles with Intimidate, I think. Like, it doesn't really like Incineroar, because Incineroar has obviously a 4x super effective Flare Blitz and Intimidate. It does have fighting coverage to hit Incineroar with, but even so, that is a losing matchup. Landorus, I think, is a bigger issue as well, just because it can't hit Landorus that hard. Like, the best it can do is a neutral hit on Landorus. And I think, weirdly, the worst one might actually be Salamence, because Salamence has access to fire coverage, it has Intimidate, resist Grass Stab, resist fighting coverage. Like, a Smart Strike is not going to do very much at -1. So I think Kartana does have checks, but I think this is going to be definitely one of the scarier newer Pokemon with Beef Boost and Dynamax. Next set of Ultra Beasts, because we're still going on the Ultra Beasts. Stakataka. Incredible stats for a Trick Room Sweeper. Like, its HP's not that high, but it's got like very high attack. It's got insanely high defense. I think people often see Stakataka's defense stat and kind of think that it's a defensive Pokemon because of that, but they forget that it still has base, I think 131 attack or something like that, like something very high, and also has base 13 speed, which means it's going to be like I think the slowest Pokemon that's relevant to the metagame, which makes it fantastic under Trick Room, and it makes Gyro Ball base 150 power on the majority of Pokemon it comes up against. In addition to that, it's a Trick Room Sweeper who can set its own Trick Room, which is huge. Like, a lot of Trick Room Sweepers will need someone next to them to set up Trick Room for them or whatever, whereas Stakataka can just kind of do it itself. It's a fantastic Dynamax target. It's got great stabs for Dynamax. Rockfall boosts its special defense by setting up sand. Steel Spike boosts its defense. Like, Body Press onto Max Knuckle, it can boost its attack. And on top of that, I think similar to Kartana, this thing could snowball, except in a slightly different way, in that, like, between Max Steel Spike and Beast Boost, you can send your defense, like, through the roof, which makes Body Press a very scary idea, because Stakataka does now get that. The downsides of this thing are its HP, like I said, isn't fantastic, which means that its bulk, I think, particularly on the special side, isn't as good as it initially looks. And also its defensive typing is not very good. Like, it's got 2 4x weaknesses to fighting and ground. It's weak to water as well, which isn't fantastic. But overall, I think Stakataka is going to be a very strong Pokemon. Like, I think it's going to be like the kind of go-to Trick Room Sweeper in this format, because Steel is looking like a very good type at the moment. Celesteela is the last of our Ultra Beasts. It's got good stats across the board. It's very versatile in the sense that it can EV to make Beast boost any of its stats again, apart from speed, realistically. Which means you can use it to, like, set itself up defensively and make it like an unkillable wall. You see sets with like Leech Seed, Protect, and a couple of coverage moves will often do something like that. Or it can go more offensive, make it so that Beast boosts its attack, or more commonly its special attack. It's got good coverage, it's got Giga Drain, Flamethrower, good dual stabs, it's got like Air Slash and Flash Cannon. So it has the option to go offensive as well, while still being very tanky. So I think the biggest downside is, as I covered a bit earlier, like, electric types are looking really good this format. If you put if you put Celesteela in Series 5, where there weren't as many electric types, I think it'd be a lot more prominent than I think it will be in this metagame, just because of the prevalence of like Tapu, Koko, Regieleki, and all that. Heatran also gives it a lot of trouble. It does have access to Earthquake, but like I said, I think its special set is normally better. So we'll see if it starts leaning more towards physical to get around like Heatran and electric types with Earthquake. And also, like, particularly with the defensive sets, it can sometimes lack immediate damage. So it has a bit of like All My Friends Are Dead syndrome, where you can hit around it and then just wait until last. But I think Beast Boost on its defensive stats does make that a bit less useful for the opponent. Like, it makes it a lot scarier to hit around it, because if Celesteela picks up a couple of KOs, then suddenly you're dealing with a Celesteela with like +2 special defense in the late game. So it's not as easy to hit around as a lot of other defensive Pokemon, but I think sometimes you still do have that option. Right, finally moving on, we have got the legendary beasts, as they are known, which is like Suicune, Raikou, and Entei. So Suicune has got very good bulk, and it's got a good support move pool. It's got Tailwind, Snarl, Icy Wind, Scold to fish for burns. I think, though, that the new speed mechanics means it's going to lose its niche as a bulky Tailwind setter. That's because in previous generations, the way speed mechanics worked were that speed changes wouldn't come into play until the start of next turn. Like, there was no changing of turn order in the middle of a turn, which meant that setting up Tailwind before everyone else and setting up Tailwind after everyone else had moved made no difference, because in both situations it doesn't kick in until next turn. Whereas in this generation with dynamic speed changes, where if you set up Tailwind or use Icy Wind or whatever, the speed changes come into play immediately, having a faster Tailwind is a lot more valuable. So take something like Tornadus, for example, who has Prankster Tailwind. If you set up a Tailwind with Tornadus, the partner gets all 4 turns of benefit from it. Because it benefits from it on turn 1 immediately after Tornadus sets it up, and then it gets 3 turns after that. Whereas with Suicune, because it moves a lot slower, and it wants to run bulk rather than speed on most sets, the partner doesn't benefit from that first turn of Tailwind, which means it effectively only gets like 3 turns of benefit rather than 4. So I think its niche as a Tailwind setter is not that great, and outside of that it doesn't really do anything better than like Tapu Fini, for example. It's also kind of passive, it doesn't really do much damage, it can't set up unless you run Calm Mind, but like I say, if you're running Calm Mind you might as well just run Fini. Raikou I think is an interesting one. Raikou and Entei have both got a couple of nice like quality of life buffs in this generation. So Raikou's got great speed, it's base 115. It also now has access to Scold, which I think it really appreciates. Having lost Hidden Power Ice, Scold gives it a way to hit ground types. So it can still threaten like Landorus, which I think is important for it. When it's competing with so many other good electric types, having something like that to set itself apart from them is really useful. So I think Raikou will have a niche in this metagame. Also, the special attack's a little underwhelming at times. It's only base 115, which means sometimes it misses out on KOs or KOs that it wants. And like I said, it has competition for other electric types, but it has its own niche within that. So I think it's going to be usable. I don't think it's going to be like top of metagame. Like, it's not going to be like top 20 or anything, but it's going to be around, I reckon. Entei, I think, has got the biggest buff in the form of Inner Focus, because Inner Focus now blocks Intimidate. And it stops getting flinched. So it's now significantly less scared of Intimidate and also significantly less scared of Rock Slide. It's a physical Fire-type Pokemon, which there aren't many of. That's a nice niche for it to fill. Got good stats. It's base 100 speed, base 115 special attack, good bulk. It's like base 110 HP. It's got Sacred Fire and Extreme Speed, which are both fantastic moves. Sacred Fire, for anyone who doesn't know. It's 100 base power, 95 accuracy, and has a 50% chance to burn, which is insane. Because it means that, like, a lot of things that would otherwise check Landorus, like, not Landorus, sorry, that would otherwise check Entei, like, maybe a Landorus wants to switch in on it or something like that, or like a Stakataka wants to switch in on a Fire-type move. It can't do that particularly safely, just because there's a 50% chance that it just gets crippled by a burn if it switches in on that. The downside is Sacred Fire and Extreme Speed are its only really particularly good moves. The rest of its move pool isn't that great. It gets Will-O-Wisp, but there's not really any point running that when you run Sacred Fire. It gets Bulldoze or Stomping Tantrum for ground coverage, which isn't awful. Like Iron Head and Stone Edge it gets. You can run Snarl if you want to use that. But like, it doesn't have anything to break through water types, especially Tapu Fini, who stops Sacred Fire burns by setting up Misty Terrain. So I think I'm interested to see what Entei turns out like in this metagame. Like, having a physical fire type that's immune to Intimidate is very nice. But I think possibly there are a few too many Pokemon that can just kind of sit in front of it. So I'm not sure. Again, same as Raikou, it's not going to be like top 20, I don't think, but it'll have a place. So that's one to look out for. Now we have Cresselia and Heatran. Cresselia has for a while been known as potentially the bulkiest Pokemon to ever exist. This thing is, like, impossible to kill. Because it's got insane bulk, it's got Moonlight for recovery. This thing's got a fantastic support move pool. It's got Icy Wind, it's got Helping Hand, it's got Trick Room, it's got Thunder Wave. It can run Calm Mind if it wants to, so it can run like slow Trick Room support. It can run like faster Icy Wind or Thunder Wave speed support. It can run bulky offensive Calm Mind set with like Psyshock and Ice Beam. So it's like the variety makes it very tricky to work around as well. It's not got great immediate damage output, particularly if you're not running a Calm Mind set, but you can't really ignore it just because, one, its support move pool is so good. Two, it's so good as an endgame Pokemon. Like, it's kind of similar to Porygon 2, I think, in terms of its role, in that, like, if you leave it on the field and your opponent picks which Pokemon they KO carefully, like, Cresselia can just win endgames against Pokemon that can't hit it that hard, because it's got Moonlight. So that's definitely something you need to be wary of when you're playing against Cresselia. It also gets Helping Hand, which means that like it can still make an impact in terms of damage, even though it's not directly damaging things itself. It still has like a form of damage output in Helping Hand. So you can't necessarily just leave it alone, but it does sometimes have a bit of all my friends are dead, which I think is generally the way you want to approach the Cresselia matchup. Heatran is an interesting one, because this thing's got great defensive typing for this particular metagame, I think. It quad resists Fairy, resists Psychic. Flash Fire means that it doesn't get hurt by the Mystical Fire that a lot of like Psychic and Fairy types run. Look at something like Hatterene in the last couple of series. You generally see like Expanding Force, Dazzling Gleam, Mystical Fire, and then Protect Trick Room. And so a lot of Steel types couldn't really stay in and try and beat Hatterene one-on-one just because they'd hit it with like a Max Flare, whereas Heatran does not have to worry about that, which is super useful. So yeah, it's a really good Fairy killer. Its bulk gives it potential for a decent defensive set. You could potentially use the Art of Armor tutor moves and Scorching Sands and Burning Jealousy if you wanted to, although I think Will-O-Wisp is just a bit more consistent, and you're probably going to see Earthbound Heat Wave more often. It also gets Taunt as well as a decent support move. You can run this thing slow or fast. You can run it offensive, you can run it defensive. It's got decent variety. I think that's kind of a key with a lot of the returning legendary Pokemon in particular, is they've got a lot of variety in their sets. The downsides of Heatran are 4 times weakness to ground hurts. And also, like, it's not going to recovery naturally, so you're generally going to want to run something like Leftovers, maybe a Healing Berry, a Sugar Berry to live a ground type move or something, which does mean that its damage output can often suffer, because even on offensive sets you generally want to live, you generally want to run like a Sugar Berry or something just to live ground type attacks, which means that occasionally it falls short offensively a little bit, but generally a very strong Pokemon. Pseudo legendary, we've got Garchomp, Salamence, and Metagross, a very blue set of Pokemon here. Garchomp has got good speed, base 102, breaks the base 100 benchmark, which is big. Great attack stat. Fantastic stats for Dynamax. Max Whirlwind lowers attack, your opponent's attack. Max Quake raises its special defense, so effectively you can buff both sides of its defenses, so it could potentially get very bulky doing that. The biggest issue is the fact that it gets beaten by and also kind of directly competes with Landorus for a slot in the metagame as like a fast ground type. Except, like I said, Landorus being so common means that, one, you don't often want to run Landorus and Garchomp on the same team, and two, like, Landorus just beats Garchomp. So I think that may really hurt its place in the metagame. I don't necessarily think Garchomp, this might be a controversial decision, but my opinion is that Garchomp is not going to be that huge in this meta. Honestly. It's also got kind of mediocre stab outside Dynamax. It's only got Earthquake and Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw's not very strong. But it has okay coverage. Like, you can run a Sword Stance set, maybe, I think could be done better than Landorus, just because with its Dynamax moves, you could run like Sword Stance, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, Protect or something. And I think that could potentially have a niche just because it can boost its defenses a lot better and live longer with its Sword Stance boost. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be that huge. Certainly not as big as it's been in previous generations. Salamence. Salamence is interesting because with Dynamax, like, you could run like an offensive Dragon Dance set with Moxie, for example, which I think could be one of those Pokemon that could snowball very quickly. Particularly now it has access to Max Airstream, whereas previously, similar to Landorus actually, like its best flying type physical stab was Fly. And so it would often struggle once it had set up a Dragon Dance if it wasn't running its Mega set. So the other option is like you can run Intimidate, and Intimidate doesn't necessarily have to be like hard support. You can run an offensive Intimidate set, or you could go for like a more supportive Intimidate set with it can run Bulldoze. It's got Breaking Swipe. Also, it gets dual Wing Beat this generation, which is good, because it means that it can set up, like if it sets up a Dragon Dance boost, for example, it isn't then relying on the 2-turn move Fly to deal damage outside of Dynamax with flying stabs. So I think that's, like, dual Wing Beat's not a great move, but it's, I think, a relevant enough change that it could have an impact on Salamence's usability. Lastly, it's got so much variety for sets. Like, it's got a fantastic mixed move pool, it's got good attack and good special attack. So it can run, like, you can run physical with, like, dual Wing Beat, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, Dragon Dance, that kind of stuff, or it can run, like, a more defensive set. A more specially offensive set with, like, Flamethrower, Hydro Pump, Draco Meteor. I think it gets Air Slash. So you'll see a lot of variety, I think, with Salamence. I think this thing's going to be relatively strong. I think it'll be interesting to see how much it is used. I think it's got a lot of potential. I don't know if it necessarily will be, like, kind of a top-tier threat, but I think this is possibly the best Salamence has been in a while, outside of its Mega Evolution. Metagross is also very scary. It's got good typing as a Steel type. It's got great bulk, really, really good bulk. I think this is going to be one of the best Dynamax threats that we're going to see, just because, like, it's going to be so hard to break when it gets big, especially with, like, Steel Spike boosts, maybe sticking Assault Vest on it. Clear Body as well, its ability is fantastic on physical Pokemon, makes them immune to Intimidate. And, like, in a metagame with Dynamax all over the place means that, like, Max Whirlwind isn't going to drop its attack. You can't drop its defenses with Ghost or Dark moves, which is useful because, like, I think a lot of Psychic types, even if they're really bulky, you can hit them with, like, a Max Phantasm. It'll drop their defense, and even if it doesn't do half to their Dynamax, like, the defense drop means it'll kill the next time. Whereas Metagross doesn't have to deal with that, especially with such a huge physical defense. I think also it's going to be a very good weakness policy user. I think Assault Vest is going to be very common. I think weakness policy as well is going to be a big thing. Like, Salamence and Metagross had a bit of a niche, I think it was in 2017, with Bulldoze weakness policy. So Salamence would run like a special set with an Assault Vest with Bulldoze. Bulldoze slows down your opponent's 2 Pokemon, doesn't slow down your Metagross, gives it the weakness policy boost. Like, that was an established set before weakness policy was such a huge part of the metagame. So I think with Dynamax and weakness policy being even stronger now than it was previously, I think something like sets along those lines could pop up again for Metagross. So it's definitely one to look out for. I think Metagross is going to be very interesting. I think the biggest issue Metagross has a lot of the time, it's got a bit of full move slot syndrome. Like, it wants to run dual stabs, so it wants, like, Zen Headbutt, Iron Head. It wants Bullet Punch, because it's not that slow. Bullet Punch is a really useful tool for it. It wants Ice Punch to deal with Landorus. It wants Earthquake or Stomping Tantrum to deal with Fire types. It wants Protect. And so obviously you can't run all of those, and I think without any one of those moves, Metagross misses out on a key piece of coverage. Like, for example, if you run like Iron Head, Ice Punch, and Bullet Punch or something with Protect, you can't really hit Fire types. Whereas if you forego Ice Punch, you can't hit Landorus that hard, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what Metagross sets pop up, but I think it's going to be a very good Pokemon, I think. Lastly, in the returning Pokemon, we have a few honourable mentions. So we've got Crobat, and I've taken a lot of flack in the last few days for suggesting that Crobat is going to have a viable place in this metagame, and I will stand by it. Maybe it's bias on my part, but I genuinely think Crobat has a decent place in this metagame. It's very fast, base 130 speed is huge, and the fact that it gets inner focus means, unlike other Tailwind users, you can't fake it out, and I think that's where the key niche is. Like with Whimsicott, Tornadus, that kind of stuff, you can just use fake out and double into it, and that puts that Pokemon under a lot of pressure immediately, because those Pokemon often don't run Protect. And so, like, fake out and then a double up into the Tailwind user slot can just immediately wipe out, whereas Crobat does not have that issue. Because it's got inner focus, it is immune to fake out, or rather, it's immune to flinching, and so fake out will, like, break a focus ash, but it won't cause it to flinch, which means it can still get Tailwind up. It's got a good support move pool. It's got, like, Haze, Taunt, Quick Guard, Toxic could be decent. It's got a good matchup against the Tapus, minus Tapu Koko, if you're running a Poison move. Like, it matches up well against Lele because it can hit it with a fast physical Poison move. Obviously, it loses to a Psychic move, but, like, it can get the first hit in, which is useful. Good against Fini because it can Taunt it. Again, you can go for, like, a Cross Poison. Good against Rillaboom. I'm effectively counting Rillaboom as the fourth Tapu at this point, honestly. Because, obviously, like, Crobat can use Brave Bird or Cross Poison to hit it with. The downside, I think, Prankster Taunt will mean that it loses the Tailwind War, so I think with Crobat you're going to want something next to it that can get around, like, Prankster Taunt Pokemon. And also it loses Super Fang, which is, like, it's not an enormous deal, but Super Fang was a big part of its moveset in previous generations, just because it's not that offensively strong in and of itself. Like, the ability to just immediately take half out of something's health is really useful. So it's kind of frail, but, like, you're going to be running Focus Sash on this thing 90% of the time. Second honorable mention is Dragonite. I think Dragonite is kind of in a similar boat to Salamence, but I don't think it's going to perform quite as well as Salamence will. The key thing it has over Salamence is multi-scale, which is really good for like a weakness policy set or maybe a Dragon Dance set, because it just lets it take less damage whilst it's setting up. And it also gets into focus, which is something Salamence doesn't get, which blocks Intimidate and Fake Out, which is less important, I think, but still nonetheless nice. Other than that, it kind of just does the same thing as Salamence, except it's slower and weaker. So I don't think this thing is going to have a huge amount of use, but it could see some. I'm not going to count it out. The Nidos as well could be decent. They have Sheer Force, and they have fantastic coverage. Like, they get Ice Beam, Sludge Bomb, Earth Power, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt. Like, you can pick any three of those, and you've got yourself a good moveset with Protect. So with, like, Sheer Force, Life Orb, those are all doing a surprisingly large amount of damage. The biggest issue with them is that neither of them are that quick. And so I think they do need, like, either speed control or redirection next to them in order to make them really good. And also, same as Landorus and Carnage, Sheer Force doesn't work with Dynamax, which is kind of a problem for them, but I still think they could have a place. I don't think they're going to be, like, earth-shatteringly good, but you may see them here and there. It's good to be aware of what they do at the very least. So, next up, we're going to have a look at the new Pokemon, and the new forms of old Pokemon. There aren't a huge amount of these that are going to be particularly relevant, I think, but there are a few key groups. The first one is the Galarian Birds. So Moltres, first of all, has very nice bulk, particularly on the special side, and it's got access to Nasty Plot, so that bulk allows it to set up more easily. The big thing, I think, for it is, like, first of all, obviously, it gets access to Nasty Plot, it gets good flying stabs, so it can Dynamax, Max Airstream and stuff, but Fiery Wrath is an incredible move. I said earlier that Rock Slide had competition for the best move in the game, and I think Fiery Wrath is possibly that competition. Because the thing with Rock Slide is, the reason it's so good is because it flinches a lot. It's a spread move, it has a 30% flinch chance, 90% accuracy, so there's a 27% chance that it flinches either of your opponent's Pokemon. And Fiery Wrath is, like, Fiery Wrath trades 10% of that flinch chance, so it's a 20% flinch chance, but it's still a spread move, except it's 90 base power and 100% accurate. And it's a stab move on Moltres. Whereas a lot of Pokemon will run Rock Slide without Stab, so it won't really do any damage. Like, Fire Wrath is gonna hurt when it hits you, as well as having a 20% chance to flinch each of your opponent's Pokemon. It's a very strong move. I think if Moltres can get the speed advantage going, Fire Wrath is going to be a pain to deal with. Downside to Moltres, I think with the offensive set, it does need to be set up in order to be kind of threatening, because it's only got base 100 special attack. So if you can stop it from setting up, then it's not that terrifying. But like I said, it's bulky enough that it's hard to stop setting up. And the sad thing is, like, its stats make it look like it should be a good support Pokemon, but its support move pool is terrible. Like, it doesn't get Recovery, it doesn't get Tailwind. I think it gets Snarl, but that's about the best support move it has. So you're generally, I think, going to see the Nasty Plot set on that. Now, Articuno is also significantly better than it used to be. It's got competitive this time around, which is amazing in the meta with Landorus and Dynamax. The thing with Articuno having competitive is that it's weak to both Max Phantasm and Max Darkness. But if you run into like a bulkier Articuno who lives a hit from one of those, it's like risky to go for them because it will drop Articuno's defense or special defense respectively, which will then give Articuno a special attack boost, so it can potentially punish you for hitting it with a super effective move, which I think is interesting. Its signature move is nice as well. The ability to freeze anything is good, just because freeze is insanely stupid. Like, if they took freeze out of the game, I would not complain. Freezes can win games immediately. Like, there's 1 in 10 times you use its signature attack, Freezing Glare, you're just gonna, like, basically knock out a Pokemon, which is dumb. It's got good speed. It's base 95, which outspeeds Landorus, which is very important as for it being a Landorus check, because obviously Landorus with Intimidate, one of the things it doesn't like dealing with is competitive Pokemon. So the fact that it outspeeds Landorus and can hit it straight away once it gets a competitive boost is big. The downside of that is it doesn't get great moves. If it had an Ice-type move, then it would be like the best Lando check in the game, easily. But the problem is the only moves it has really outside of its dual stabs are Shadow Ball and Ancient Power, which aren't great. It really struggles to hit Steel types in particular. So I think that's going to be the biggest shortcoming. On the other hand, though, it does have fantastic speed control options. It gets Tailwind and it gets Trick Room in Prison. So it could be run as your own Tailwind Pokemon. It could be run as an anti-Trick Room tech, which I think could be interesting. So I think this thing has a lot of potential. I'll be interested to see where this goes, but I think Articuno is going to be very good. Zapdos, I think, is the best of the birds so far, just based off like initial impressions and what I've seen of it. It's got great offensive typing for Dynamaxing. It stabs boosts speed and attack, which is obviously the two most important stats for an offensive Pokemon. Defiant is fantastic on a physical Pokemon, especially in a meta with Dynamax. Like I said with Articuno, like, you can't use Max Whirlwind to drop its attack. You can't hit it with Ghost or Dark moves. So like something like Dragapult is not going to enjoy trying to deal with Zapdos. I guess it can Max Airstream, but I think the biggest downfall of Zapdos is it's very one-dimensional. It can't really do anything other than go like offensive and hit things. It doesn't really have any support moves. So you are running, generally, I think you're just going to run either 3 attacks and protect, or you're going to run a choice set with 4 attacks. So I think that's kind of the big downside, but it is very good at what it does. The other issue is, like, it's not insanely fast. It gets outsped by a lot of electric types. And so it could suffer for that, but base 100 speed is still decent. And it has access to Max Airstream with Stab. So definitely one to look out for, I think. So next up we have the new Regis. Both of these have insane abilities. They boost their respective stab attacks. So Regidrago, its ability boosts Dragon moves. Regieleki's boosts electric moves by 1.5 times, which effectively gives it just like a free choice specs on its stab moves. What this means is that, like, they do huge damage, even on resisted hits. Like, the boost to its stab moves is now bigger than the boost that, say, Porygon Z gets from adaptability. The downside of this is that they become very one-dimensional, because suddenly the rest of their moves are incredibly underwhelming. And they both suffer from, like, really not very good coverage options. Regieleki has some coverage, like some physical coverage, and it gets Dragon Dance, but it's not really worth losing its signature move Dragon Energy, which is basically a Dragon-type Eruption, or like Draco Meteor. I think you're generally going to want to go special on this thing, which then does kind of pigeonhole it into running only Dragon-type attacks. And it's also not really fast enough by itself to make the most out of Dragon Energy, because it's only base 80 speed, which means it's often going to get hit before it can fire off Dragon Energy, which weakens it quite a bit. But still, like, Draco Meteor is going to be a huge move. Like, the single target base 130 attack with that ability is going to chunk pretty much everything. It's got decent bulk, thanks to its base 200 HP. But I think the problem is it needs to invest in defenses to make use of that bulk. Admittedly, it doesn't take a huge amount of investment in defense to really top it up. Because, like, a little bit of investment does have, like, a bigger impact than the same investment would have on, like, a higher defensive stat, if that makes sense. It's also hard walled by fairies, which is kind of obvious if it's running Mono Dragon. And like I said, it needs probably speed support or redirection to actually use Dragon Energy well. So I think this thing's going to be decent. I don't think it's fantastic. It's certainly not as good as Regieleki, in my opinion. But it could see some use, just to nuke things with dragon moves. Regieleki, I think, is going to be scary. Like, this thing is the fastest Pokemon that has ever been put in the game. It's got base 200 speeds. It's insane. Like, you can run Modest and I think 28 speed EVs and outspeed Pheromosa, which is the second fastest relevant Pokemon in the format. The issue with Regieleki is, again, very one-dimensional. It basically only has electric attacks. Things that it does have a good variety of electric attacks, which I think could make up for that fact. So it has, like, Volt Switch, its signature move, I can't remember what it's called, it's like Electric Cage or something, is pretty good. Traps Pokemon in, deals, I think it's an 8 per turn residual damage, which is nice. I'm not sure if that effect lasts after Regieleki is dead. If it does, then that's huge. If it doesn't, then it's less huge. Because this thing does not live for long. It also gets, like, I don't think I mentioned Electro Web is useful. It can also run a few support moves. Like, you can maybe go for, like, a screen set or something if you wanted to. Like, get up fast screens. But I think most of the time you're going to be running either Choice Specs or maybe, like, Life Orb or Focus Sash. Because its bulk is, like, irredeemably bad. Like, it's 80, 50, 50, which is terrible. Like, Rillaboom can OHKO this thing with Grassy Glide. Fortunately, because you don't need to invest that much in speed, you can invest in some bulk, which is nice, and you can always go Modest, which is also good, but it is still incredibly frail. I think it kind of can offset that similar to Tapu Koko in that it can Volt Switch out before most things can hit it, which is useful. But I think this thing is going to be very scary, but very one-dimensional. Like, if you put a ground type in front of it, it's screwed. So it's one of those ones where I think if you figure out how to play around it, it's not that fantastic, but it's going to be terrifying when it's on the field, just because of how quick it is and how hard it hits. Last of the new mons are the horses. We have Ghost Horse and Ice Horse. Ghost Horse, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to spend long on this, it sucks. It's got great speed at base 130. It's got great special attack base 145, but it's only attacking moves of Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse, which is trash. That's awful coverage, like, just terrible. It's got a decent support move pool with, like, Will-O-Wisp, Snarl, Taunt, gets a scary face you could maybe use, but it's frail as all hell, and so it can't really use that. Like, it basically just plays like a worse Dragapult, in my opinion. Like, it's worse bulk, worse speed. Dragapult's got, like, as good a support move pool, basically. And Dragapult has, like, coverage. So, honestly, I think Spectre is not going to be very good. Glastrier, on the other hand, I think could be very good. Like, this thing has insane stats for a Trick Room Sweeper. Like, base 30 speed, so it's slow. And then it's got, like, I think it's got, like, 110, 130, 110 bulk, and, like, 135 attack or something like that. Which is kind of insane. Got good coverage options. It's got high horsepower, it's got close combat, it's heavy slam. Its best stab is Ice Cool Crash, which isn't great, that's a bit of a downside, but I think this thing's going to be a max target a lot of the time, so the reduced accuracy on Ice Cool Crash is not so much of an issue. It does, with its coverage, though, lack any way to really beat bulky water types. It doesn't want to be burned by Scald or anything. So I think that's one way you can sit in its way. And also, Mono Ice is really bad typing. It only has one resistance, and that is to other ice types, and it has 4 weaknesses. So I think its Incredible Bulk can be somewhat misleading, in a way. Like, I don't think it will live as long as its stats suggest it will, just because its defensive typing is not very good. However, I still think it's going to be very strong, like as an offensive Pokemon. I mean, ideally with this thing, you're going to set up Trick Room and you're going to kill everything before it hits you. I also forgot to mention that these two both have, like, effectively like a Beast Boost equivalent, or like a Moxie equivalent for their respective stats. Spectria gets Grimnay, I think it is, which boosts special attack every time it gets a kill, and Glastrier gets Chillnay, I want to say it's called, which is just Moxie. So this thing under Trick Room, once it starts picking up KOs, can snowball very easily. So I think Glastrier is definitely something to look out for. Spectria, bad, don't use Spectria. That's my opinion. So the last section we're going to look at is how existing Pokemon fare. So this section is going to take a slightly different approach, because it's focused just on what's changed in the meta for a particular Pokemon, and it's going to be largely, I think, comparative, particularly for Pokemon with direct competition that's been introduced, such as like Terrain Setters, Tailwind Setters, that kind of thing. I'll also largely be comparing to Series 5, because Series 6 was a very different beast. I don't think that's really worth comparing to in this current meta. I will also only mention Pokemon that I think have seen a relatively big change. So something like Tyranitar, for example, is still a good Pokemon. It'll drop in usage a bit just because there's more stuff going around. There's nothing in the metagame, I think, that has significantly changed how viable Tyranitar is, for example. Like, there's nothing I can pinpoint that makes it interesting to talk about. So stuff like that I'm going to kind of leave off to one side. So we're going to start off by looking at priority Tailwind users in Whimsicott and Talonflame. Now, the obvious comparison is Tornadus here as the new practice Tailwind user. So for Whimsicott, First Blast, faster than Tornadus, which means it can taunt it or get a Tailwind up before Tornadus does anything. Taunt is a bit dangerous because I think Tornadus is going to run a lot of Mental Herb, just because, like I said earlier, Tornadus is bulkier than Whimsicott. It can get away with not running Sash, and it doesn't necessarily need to invest in speed. Tornadus doesn't, because it is already slower than Whimsicott, and wants to probably put more into bulk. Whimsicott, I'd argue, possibly has a better support move pool than Tornadus. Has Fake Tears, Helping Hand, has Charm. Like, this thing's a really good jack of all trades in terms of support Pokemon. But I think once Tailwind is up, I think Whimsicott does less. Like, it can't Icy Wind to maintain speed control like Tornadus can. It doesn't have nearly the offensive stats that Tornadus does. Like, Tornadus has base 125 special attack, compared with Whimsicott's like 80 or something. So I think Tornadus is more of a threat once it's set up Tailwind. And like I said, Whimsicott kind of has to run Sash, I think, because of its poor bulk, whereas Tornadus doesn't, which I think gives Tornadus an edge in that department. I think Whimsicott will likely still see use, like particularly if you want to run Tornadus next to Pokemon that are weak to, like, Electric, for example. Maybe if you want to run it with other flying types, you don't want to double up on weaknesses with Tornadus. So you can see Whimsicott in that kind of role, or if you really want Fake Tears, for example, Whimsicott has use. But I don't think it'll be as common as Tornadus. Talonflame, this thing's going to suck again. Like, it was okay in Series 5. It was good in Series 6 because it was the only priority Tailwind user. I think this thing is not going to see really any use. Again, now, the upside of Talonflame is it's faster than both Whimsicott and Tornadus, so it can set up Tailwind before either of those two. But they both have priority taunt, whereas Talonflame doesn't, and so it can't stop opposing Tailwind setters from setting up their Tailwind, and it loses its priority really easily. Like, you can, if you're really desperate, you can fake out and max move into Talonflame turn 1 and guarantee that it does not get its priority. Gale Wings is just worse than Prankster. Also, Talonflame stats suck. Like, it's got like similar offense to Whimsicott, except significantly less utility. Yeah, I don't think this thing's going to be very useful in this metagame, honestly. Next up, we have Terrain Setters, Indeedee and Tapu Bulu. And yes, I know I said Tapu Bulu, but like that's basically what Rillaboom is. It's Tapu Bulu, but better. Indeedee, I think, is less directly in competition with Tapu Lele than like Rillaboom is with Tapu Bulu, for example, because they fill very different niches. Well, certainly Indeedee female does anyway. I'm not really going to talk about Indeedee male, because Indeedee male does kind of feel like a worse version of Tapu Lele. But yeah, Terrain's going to be a big part of the meta now that Tapu's back. And Indeedee, I think, is unique enough that it will definitely still see use. It has access to Follow Me and Helping Hand support, which Tapu Lele doesn't get. Like, Follow Me in particular, the only other good Follow Me user is Togekiss, who I'm going to go over in a second, but I don't think Togekiss is as strong in this metagame as it has been in previous ones. So I think that works in Indeedee's favour in carving itself its own niche. Has fire coverage, which in Mystical Fire, which Tapu Lele doesn't get. It's also got better defensive typing, I think. It's immune to Ghost, which is huge on a Psychic type. So its only weaknesses are Bug and Dark, which I think aren't that common when you compare them to like Steel, for example, that Tapu Lele is weak to, or Poison. And especially with the Tapus back in the meta, like Fairy resists Bug and Dark. So now that the Tapus are back, I think Bug and Dark are going to be less commonly seen. So I think that works in Indeedee's favour. The obvious downside of Indeedee over Tapu Lele is the lack of offensive power, but I think you're not using Indeedee for offense. So the fact that it fills a completely different role to Tapu Lele but still set up Psychic Terrain, I think, is going to mean that Indeedee still has a huge place in the metagame. It's not going to be as big as it was like in Series 5, but I think it's still going to be up there. Rillaboom is just better than Tapu Bulu, honestly, in my opinion. The fact that Tapu Bulu doesn't get Grassy Glide or Play Rough means it's just not as good. Like, Rillaboom has a much better move pool. It's got Fake Out, it's got Knockoff, it's got Grassy Glide, it's got U-Turn. Like, that's a set in and of itself. That is a Rillaboom set. And arguably probably the most common Rillaboom set that we saw in Series 5 was Fake Out, Knockoff, Grassy Glide, U-Turn. And Bulu gets none of those moves. Like, I can't overstate how important Grassy Glide is on this Pokemon. And the fact that Bulu doesn't get it, like, I think Rillaboom's the clear choice here. Like, the stats are very similar. Rillaboom has better speed, slightly worse attack, but only by 5. Like, base stats, 125 versus 130, which is kind of a negligible change. And the bulk's comparable, basically. Like, Bulu has Fairy type, but that's kind of neither here nor there. It removes Bug weakness, but Bug weakness isn't very common. Problem is, it adds a 4 times Poison weakness now, and a Steel weakness, which is huge. The immunity to Dragon's nice, but like, without Play Rough, Bulu can't hit most dragons that hard anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Rillaboom's just better than Tapu Bulu, honestly. So I think Rillaboom's usage, I reckon, will probably stay roughly where it was before in Series 5, which is, I think, one of the few Pokemon that's gonna be true of in this meta. Last couple I want to cover are these three: Togekiss, Cinderace, Porygon 2. Togekiss, I would say, like, the reason I think it's going to drop off is the increase in Electric and Steel types that would introduce. Look at, like, the number of times I've said this list, but Regieleki, Tapu Koko, Raikou, Zapdos, Xurkitree, like, Togekiss does not really want to face off against any of those. Heatran stonewalls it, like, even if you're running Heat Wave, like, now there's a Steel type that Togekiss just can't break. Metagross is a good matchup against it, particularly if it doesn't have Heat Wave. Celesteela beats it even if it does have Heat Wave, because it's not weak to Heat Wave. 4 times resists flying. Celesteela doesn't take that much from a Heat Wave, so that's going to be a problem. Like, I think it's got a lot sterner opposition. However, I would still argue that, like, there's definitely an argument for it still being the best redirection user in the format. And it's certainly the best redirection user in the format on an offensive team, I think. I think its biggest competition for redirection, or the two biggest pieces of competition for redirection are Indeedee and Amoonguss. I think Amoonguss loses out because Rage Powder is worse than Follow Me, because you can run Safety Goggles or Grass type moves to get around that. Or just, sorry, Safety Goggles or be a Grass type to get around that. Indeedee is a great redirector, but has less bulk than Togekiss, and also has less offensive options. So I think, like, on an offensive team, Togekiss is still going to be viable, but you got to be careful of the amount of checks that there are now for this thing. Cinderace is going to be interesting because the introduction of Landorus, I think, is a problem for it. It doesn't really want to have to deal with more Intimidate users in the format. Like, Incineroar was kind of bad enough, but at least it had High Jump Kick to smack Incineroar with. Whereas Landorus and Salamence, it has nothing to hit super effectively. They can both boost their speed to get faster than it. They're both good offensive Pokemon. So I think the increase in Intimidate is going to make life a bit more difficult for Cinderace. The flip side of that is that, like, in previous series we've seen, like, Cinderace Bisharp was the most common example of this. You'd lead Cinderace next to a competitive user or a Defiant user. With sometimes see, like, Cinderace Braviary. But now we have Galarian, Articuno, and Zapdos for that, which are, in my opinion, significantly better than either Braviary or Bisharp. So I think that kind of lead pairing of Cinderace next to a Defiant or competitive user is going to be very strong. So I think that's the reason I want to mention Cinderace here, is the fact that it gets new partners, which I think make it more viable. Because the biggest thing it struggled against was Intimidate, and now there are Pokemon in the metagame that can, like, destroy Intimidate users. Like, Zapdos ruins Incineroar. Articuno matches up really well against Landorus and Salamence, for example. Like, if you really wanted to, you could probably run both on the same team as Cinderace. So I think that kind of access to good Defiant partners makes it a lot more viable, because it gives it a defense against Intimidate. The last Pokemon I want to talk about is Porygon 2, and unfortunately Porygon 2 is not quite the same success story as the other two are. It matches up well, or decently at least, against a lot of new threats. Like, it has good Bulk Beam coverage, which hits, like, Landorus, Celesteela, all the new birds. It's Fini for super effective, it's Rillaboom for super effective, it's Wims and Pulp for super effective. Good mon in the end game, because, like, if it gets a download boost, it can recover off and do some decent damage. The biggest thing for Porygon 2 is the fact that Cresselia now exists. And Cresselia and Porygon 2 compete for very, very similar roles of, like, bulky Trick Room support. Both of them have recovery, both of them have access to, like, Ice Beam. The things that P2 I think has better than Cress are its defensive typing is better. Its only weakness is fighting, and fighting's max moves are weaker than other max moves, which works in its favour for sure. The other thing is that it's got slightly better special attack stat, which means it does hit a bit harder, especially with download. So if you want a slightly more offensive Trick Room setter, then P2 could be a good go-to. The downsides, P2 has to run Eviolite. So that takes his item slot, whereas Cress is still free to run, like, Mental Herb. It can run Lefties if it wants. It can run, like, a Healing Berry. It can run, like, a Ghost or a Dark Resist Berry, for example. And I think Cresselia is just a lot more versatile and a lot better as a dedicated support Pokemon. So I think, unfortunately, as much as I love Porygon 2, as anyone who's seen my Twitch emotes will know, I think this thing's usage is going to drop pretty sharply. It went from being top 10 and ban-worthy in Series 5 to, I think, just like Cresselia's understudy in this format. Which is unfortunate, because I love this thing. but this duck has unfortunately been replaced by a different duck. So, that is all the Pokemon I wanted to cover. That is it for this video. Thank you everyone for watching. I know it's been a bit of a long one. I will timestamp this, so if there's anything you want to look at specifically, you can just jump ahead to the bits that are relevant to you. But yeah, let me know if there are any Pokemon you think I missed out that are going to be relevant, or that there have been big changes to, or anything I've got wrong. If you'd like to correct me on anything, then feel free to drop a comment. Also, just let me know if you'd like to see more content along these lines in future, like more kind of analytical content rather than battle-related content. So what I might do is I might kind of pick certain Pokemon that I've covered here and go over them in more depth, like kind of give a more detailed breakdown of like what their sets are, what their checks are, what they're strong against, what they're weak against, that kind of thing, and focus more on individual Pokemon, which could be fun. I think that could especially be good for players who are newer to Generation 8, who haven't maybe seen Pokemon like Landorus, Ultra Beasts, like the Zapdos, that kind of stuff. People who haven't seen that before, I think that stuff could be useful. So yeah, let me know if you'd want to see more content along those lines, a more kind of focused analysis of certain Pokemon, or certain like archetypes, or just more of this in general. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Yeah, bye-bye.